Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Jamie MacDonald here, Vanguard Pro and Olympus Visionary. Also recently added as a Nisi Filters brand ambassador. So, we're going to talk a little bit about filters as well as tripods and cameras here for this little hangout that we're doing. I'm on location here in a place that I like to shoot just outside of Eaton Rapids, Michigan. It's farmland out here. In case you can't tell by the big trucks on the side of the road and the fields behind me and the fact that I'm standing on a dirt road, that should let you know that I'm in a rural location. And that just happens to be where I like to shoot sunsets. There's no reason you can't shoot a sunset in, say, an urban setting, City sunsets are definitely something to shoot. I'll be doing that next week in Chicago, teaching a workshop there. So, like I said, whether it's the countryside or the big city, sunsets are perfect no matter where you're at. So let's talk a little bit about location scouting, seeing how I led off with where I'm at. So I think the best way to go about location scouting, or one of the easiest ways to do it, is use Google Earth or Google Maps. And Google Maps, you can turn on the satellite view so you get an idea of what the countryside and your surroundings are going to be like. And it also gives you a good indicator of which direction is north, west, east, south, all of that. And you know that the sun sets in the west. It does in my part of the world, and I don't know about yours, but I'm assuming it does there too. And another thing that I like to use as a tool, kind of in conjunction with Google Earth or Google Maps, is an application called the Photographer's Ephemeris. And the Photographer's Ephemeris, and I'll give links to all this stuff after this hangout is done though, but the Photographer's Ephemeris basically takes advantage of Google Earth's satellite view, and then it will overlay a line that shows you where the sun is going to be setting. So what you can do is, using Google Maps, or if you're just out driving, like how I found this location here, you can open up the Photographer's Ephemeris, and if there's a cool location or landmark on the area that you found via Google Maps or location scouting by driving, you'll be able to see where the sun actually rises and sets, as well as the moon rising and setting in relationship to your location. And that's one of the things that I do periodically throughout the year, is use the Photographer's Ephemeris to get an idea of where the sun is going to set in relationship to this location where I'm at right now. And this location that I'm at, if you're somebody who follows my work online, you'll probably recognize it. It's what I call the barn. Everybody's heard of the barn. So here we are behind this gigantic old barn. I don't know how old it is, but I'm guessing it's definitely at least 100 years old, and it's seen all kinds of crazy weather over the last century. And it's got so much character and so much charm, and that's why I use it as part of my scene so regularly in photography. And that kind of leads us into one of the next subjects. When you get outside of your location scouting, or when you're doing your location scouting, you want to find something to put into your scene. It's great to have a sunset over the lake. I mean, everybody loves a beautiful ocean or lake sunset with the sun coming down just blazing hot behind the water. That's great. But you know what makes photos shot in those settings stand out a little bit more? Like a sailboat in that scene, right? Or a couple walking down the beach. You need something to add to that scene to give it a little bit more pizzazz, a little bit more flair. There's nothing wrong with a minimalistic shot every once in a while that just has the sun and a basic landscape, but to have a really strong focal point, I think, is what makes the difference between a snapshot of the sun setting and a photograph of the sun setting. So that's why I'm out here at this location shooting the barn that I shoot so frequently. Now let's talk about composition. So you found this cool location with this really cool feature, be it an old barn or a gigantic old oak tree, or, I don't know, a lighthouse, whatever it is that you found that you want to feature in your sunset, provided that the sun is going to set in a good, relationship to that feature. How do we compose that? There's a couple of ways to go about it. And if you look at the cameras I've got set up here, you'll notice that I've got one flipped up into portrait orientation, and I've got the other one in just your standard landscape orientation. Now, why is that? Why would I have completely different compositions for basically the same for the same scene? Well, there's a couple of reasons. Number one, I like to shoot, personally, landscapes in the portrait orientation. Why? Because I love having a big sky in my scene. So I like to compose what I would call like dramatically, which is with the camera tilted so I've got more sky necessarily than ground in my scenes. if the sky is lending itself to that type of a setup. If you've got, you know, great clouds going on in the sky, those will add just another dramatic flair to the scene. Now, when I'm shooting landscape orientation, I think my mindset is a little bit different. When I'm shooting landscape orientation, generally I'm shooting really wide. I'm not necessarily, you know, cranked in as much as I might be if I'm doing portrait, because if I'm in portrait I can zoom in on the subject, but because I'm tilted back I still get an expansive sky. If I'm doing that in the portrait orientation or the landscape orientation, it's not quite as effective. So when I'm shooting landscape orientation, I tend to be pulled back further. And that's why on this camera I've got a 7 to 14 millimeter lens on. So I'm shooting crop sensor Olympus cameras here. So 7 millimeters on my camera might be like 14 millimeter on your full frame camera. So it's pretty wide. So if I'm cranked all the way back as wide as this lens will get at 7 millimeters, again, I'm going for drama here. Now, how will I position my focal point in that scene? Well, I think I'm going to position it generally skewed to one side or the other. I'm not one of those people that likes to center everything up necessarily. I'm not saying don't do that. Experiment a little bit, you know. You always hear about rule of thirds, you know, always, you know, shift everything or whatever. You don't have to do that. It's not necessarily a rule that is not meant to be broken. Break it every once in a while. You'll be amazed at what happens when you do that. But for today's shooting, it's kind of what I'm doing. I've got my scene set up so I'm shifted with the barn kind of occupying the left third of the scene. And I've got this wide open, expansive field over here to my right. Now, I'm kind of rushing through this stuff because the sun is setting, and I want to at least fire off a couple of shots for myself that I can share after this whole thing is said and done. So I'll jump next to camera settings. And I'm going to say something that people who are die-hard, like, you know, pros, or people who are like totally dead on, you know, the whole mindset of I have to shoot manual all the time. Let me tell you, if your camera has a scene mode where you can, you know, determine like if you're like a beach scene, or in this case, a sunset scene, don't shy away from using that every once in a while. The whole purpose of shooting a photo like this is to get a good photo. And if your camera has a scene mode in it that's going to do wonders for a sunset, you know, shot, just flip it into that scene mode and take that shot. Take at least one and see what it looks like, and then jump back into doing your manual settings and shoot that way, you know. Don't ever discount some of the built-in modes that your camera has. It might make it a little bit easier for you, you know. And then you can always shoot in that mode, go back and look at the EXIF data, see how it treated the scene, and then go back the next time and go into manual mode and just kind of repeat those settings so long as your scene is moderately similar. It's a good way to learn. So my settings today, I'm shooting the way that I always like to shoot. I'm lazy. I shoot an aperture priority almost all the time, unless the scene demands that I have to get into manual mode and start adjusting my shutter speeds and ISO and everything independently of one another. But for this, I'm just, like I said, shooting an aperture priority. The settings on my camera, I'm shooting at my lowest ISO. Well, almost my lowest. I'm shooting at my base ISO, which is 200 on these cameras. You know, a lot of cameras, 100 is your base ISO. Tends to give you the cleanest file, and that's always what I want to go for here, is the cleanest file that I can get. I'm shooting wide open on this lens. It's actually, believe it or not, it might look like it on this here that's light out. Starting to get a little dark, believe it or not. So I'm shooting wide open at f2.8. I'll probably end up stopping down to 5.6 to give me a little bit more depth so I can get a little bit more of this low-growing corn here in focus in my scene. I'm focused on the barn. I'm tilted up, so I've got that dramatic composition that I was talking about in portrait orientation. So I'm going to fire off one shot here. Actually, you know what? Let me stop down to 5.6 for this one. All right, single shot. It's dark, okay? The sun is behind the barn. Naturally, it's going to be dark, right? Let me turn the camera so you can see what the scene unfolding behind me looks like. The barn is completely in shadow. There's nothing wrong with a silhouette, you know. I mean, that's totally acceptable, right? As long as you enjoy the photo that you're shooting, that's all that matters. But if you want to get around that, there's a couple of ways we can do this. The easiest way to do it, I think, is if your camera allows you to bracket your shots, which means that it's going to fire off a series of exposures, one at your middle exposure, which in this case is pretty dark, and then it'll overexpose a shot, and then it'll underexpose a shot. So you've got all the different variations in light are covered with exposures. And then you can blend them in post-processing using a technique called HDR. If you use Lightroom, it's built into Lightroom and gives great results. Be careful, HDR can be It can be nasty sometimes, okay? Use it in moderation. It can get out of control really quick. The shot that I'm going to do right now, and the one that I will share when this is all said and done, is going to be a bracketed shot, so you can see how I get the barn exposed, the sky exposed, and even this foreground that is completely in shadow exposed. So it's going to fire off 3 shots with an exposure separation of 2 stops. So here we go. There we go. It's 3 shots just like that. Boom. On to the next camera. So what have I got going on here on the front of the camera? I'm using a filter. Now it's getting a little dark for this filter, but the purpose of this filter is to tone down the sky without toning down the foreground. So what I can do is I can expose for my foreground, get all this nice and exposed properly without the sky being overexposed because the filter is darker on the top half. So let me fire off this shot here really quick. Oh, and I had that one set up bracketed as well. Let me go back to a single exposure really quick here. And same settings that I was using before. F5.6, ISO 200 on this camera. And one more. And just so you know, do one more. Let me recompose this. A little too centered for me. There we go. Now, got my shot. So, like I said, I did bracketed shots. I did single exposures. If you're shooting with a modern camera, make sure you're shooting in RAW. I'd like you to be shooting in RAW. And the reason is you've got a lot of leeway with how much you can bump up your exposure to bring in some shadow detail. Or as long as it's not 100% completely overexposed in the sky, you can actually bring those highlights down and help even out your exposure some. So just remember, try shooting in RAW if you can. Now, this is something that you need to understand about sunsets. The action's right here, right? I mean, that's where the sun is setting. You know, again, it's kind of hard to see via a phone, you know, that's kind of how it is. But here's the deal. As the sun goes down, it's pretty incredible down that way. Again, you can't really tell because I'm doing this from my phone. I'm going to flip the cameras around. I'm going to fire off a shot just so you guys can see what happens behind you at sunset. It's something to pay attention to because as the sun goes down, all the clouds that are up above us and behind us light up with color. So don't ever neglect what's behind you when you're shooting a sunset. I'm going to shoot a sunset really quick here. I'm going to talk about this, these sticks that I'm sitting on here. So let me get this shot really quick. I'll tell you what I'm composing with here too, what I'm doing. So we're on this old country dirt road. Well, I don't know if it's an old dirt road, but it's a dirt road, so I'm just going to say it's old. All right? So I'm going to compose so that I'm really low to this road. Now, I'm not using the Alta 2 for this. I'm using the brand new VO2. There we go. And this one is the carbon fiber model, which is something that it's something that I love having so that I can travel with it. It makes travel a lot easier. So I know I'm off camera here, but trust me on this. I'm just getting a little low here in my shot. And I'm getting zoomed in on these clouds just a bit. And what I'm doing is I'm manually focusing, so hopefully you guys can hear me. Because as it's getting dark, sometimes it's just a little easier to manually focus on your scene. So let me get this one shot and I can turn around and talk to you a little bit more. There we go. Okay, so the composition for this scene. Using the road because it's leading straight into these beautiful pink clouds back here. So the road is now my focal point, or one of the compositional key points that is leading to my focal point, which is this gigantic pink cloud off in the distance. It's gorgeous out here, you guys. I've got a couple of people here shooting with me tonight, so at least I don't have to see this alone. It's cool that other people get to share in this with me. So let's talk about equipment again, you know. So I talked a little bit about the cameras I'm using. I'm shooting, you know, I shoot for Olympus, so of course I'm using Olympus cameras. I'm shooting with the OMD EM1 Mark II tonight. I've got a pair of those sitting out here. I've got a 12 to 40 lens on there, so 12 millimeters. Yeah, pretty wide, you know, 40 millimeters if I need to zoom in a little bit, like I did on the clouds back here. Then I've got this really wide angle lens. It's as wide as I can get on my camera system without going to a fisheye. You got to support this stuff, right? You got to be able to hold it steady. Even though I've got killer image stabilization on my cameras, it's nice to be able to just set your camera on something stable, especially when you're doing these bracketed shots out here for HDR. So that's where these tripods come in. And that's where being a Vanguard Pro or brand ambassador is definitely a cool thing. So what I'm shooting with tonight, I'm shooting with the Alta Pro 2. This tripod has kind of changed how I do a lot of my shooting. I'm not going to spend a ton of time talking about this one in particular because we are not giving this one away tonight. There might be something that we could do down the road to give one of these away for you guys. But what's cool about this one is the center column can fold down. Let me loosen this up here. And you can slide that center column back. So now your camera can dangle out over the edge of things. It's really an ingenious design. And then of course also it pivots around the legs. Such a rad idea. It's really changed kind of how I can get at things when I'm shooting, you know. Okay, so thank God somebody from Vanguard is in the chat room answering questions because I really can't do that. Not out here. Not the easiest thing to do. So that's the Alta Pro 2 Plus. I've been shooting with that for a while now, for a couple of months, and if you're looking for like a standard size tripod, and you're in the market to get something new, if you don't have a good tripod, I think this is where I'd probably start, is looking at the Alta line. They're pretty incredible. But tonight we're talking about this bad boy right here. So I haven't had a portable tripod in ages. So I travel for Olympus. You know, I'm getting on planes and I'm doing workshops all over the place, and I'm usually lugging a big tripod with me. And it's, you know, it's nice, like I said, to have a bigger tripod with you, you know, to have that stability. Shooting in some of the cities I've shot in, it might be nice to have that as a weapon to protect yourself. But you really want to be able to travel with something portable, and that's where the VO line comes in. So what I've got right here is the VO 235 carbon fiber. Super compact tripod. This thing pretty much weighs nothing. And what I like about it also, that is also a feature on the Alta series that I've got over there, is that these twist locks are quarter turn. So rather than some other models or brands, you know, where you have to continually turn to get loose, it's just a quarter turn and then they're locked, which is, it's kind of nice to have that. It just makes takedown really quick. But I was talking about portability, right? Like this is supposed to be super portable. Well, I'll show you what makes it so portable. Let me take my camera off here. And I'm missing the sunset, just to show you how rad this is. So center column, right? You've got a lock right here. You undo that lock and let the center column, there's technical difficulty for me there. Center column folds between the legs. So you put the head between your legs and kiss oversized tripods goodbye. How do you like that? Marketing talk, right? It's kind of crazy. I get a little goofy every once in a while. So anyways, now you want to win one of these VO2s, right? And if I'm not mistaken, we're giving away the VO 204AB. Very similar to this model. Portable. You gotta love portability, I'm telling you. And how can you win that, you know? Well, I think that my buddies over at Vanguard maybe have been talking about it in the chat room while I've been out here running my mouth trying to shoot the sunset. And that cloud is just getting bigger and pinker by the minute. So how do you win a VO of your own? Let me see one of your sunset photos. That's what we're out here talking about. We're out here talking about shooting sunset, and we want to give you one of these tripods. So I think the least you could do is show us what you got. Submit one of your photos. You can either put it in the chat here if it's possible. If not, you can put it on the Vanguard page. And I think the folks at Vanguard, hopefully I can get in on the judging of this. We'll go through and we'll draw somebody's name out based on whether we like their picture, how much we like their picture, what we like about their picture. We'll talk about it. You know, we'll do a very nice, kind critique talking about what we really liked about it, and we'll give you a tripod. How cool is that? So this is something I didn't talk about either. So I talked about, I'm shooting wide, right? I've got a 12 to 40 here. 40 millimeters isn't exactly like the longest lens out there, right? So what can I do when I'm in this situation? I say I'm going to put a longer lens on, and even though the sun's set over there behind this, I'm going to turn around and shoot the magic that's happening on the other side of the sunset. But I'm going to use a telephoto lens, and that's probably not something you hear a lot of people talk about when they talk about shooting sunsets. And I'm going to share an example of that. As soon as this broadcast is done, I'm going to jet back home, and I'm going to put a picture up on the Vanguard page to show you the reason why using a telephoto lens during a sunset shoot is a really cool idea. But first, let me go grab this telephoto lens over here. Hey, look, it's in a Vanguard bag. All right, so I have a 40 to 150, so in full frame equivalency, because I'm a 2x crop factor, that's an 80 to 300, so it's got a little bit of reach to it. I'm dying to shoot this big pink cloud down here, so I had to put on something longer. I'll give you a little bit of info about why I want to share with you something shot with a telephoto as soon as this is done. Because have you ever seen those photos of sunsets where the sun just looks, it's larger than life. It just looks like a gigantic ball of fire, you know, with something silhouetted in front of it, you know, a couple walking down the beach or the sailboat I was talking about earlier, what have you. That effect is achieved with a telephoto lens. So don't discount using a telephoto lens to shoot a sunset. It's just one of those things that I think a lot of people don't consider. But once you've done it once, you'll start finding reasons to get out and shoot the sunset and bring that big giant lens with you when you are going out to shoot the sunset. So I'm excited to share that shot with you guys as soon as this broadcast is done. Luckily, I only live about 6 miles from here, so it'll only take a minute to get back and post that image up online. Now, how am I going to shoot this? What am I going to do to compose this? If I'm shooting with a telephoto lens, something way off in the distance, I'm going to do the same thing that I talked about doing here with the barn. I got to find something to put in that frame, something to add a little bit of drama to that. It'd be nice if I could get one of these two guys here to walk down that road a little way so that I could get them as a silhouette with those gigantic clouds in the background. Hint, 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 hint. See, I planned on putting one of these guys on the spot when I was doing this, and sure enough, that's exactly what I'm doing. There he goes. It's always pays to have somebody here. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about what it's like to shoot a sunset when you've got a group of people around. What's the best way to go about that, you know, so that you can guarantee everybody gets a good shot, right? Line up side by side, take turns getting that you know, prime shooting location. Don't be a jerk. Don't hog the best spot to shoot from. That's not very cool. And take turns putting each other in the frame. That's what I'm doing with my buddy Dave here. So let's talk about what I'm going to do here. So by zooming in on these clouds, just like I was talking about zooming in on the sun, it makes the sun look larger than life, right? So the same effect is going to happen if I zoom in on the clouds. And I'm looking behind you guys because I think there's a car coming. Okay, maybe not. All right, so here we go. So I'm going to zoom in on the clouds so that the clouds look really big. And then I'll put Dave in the frame so that Dave will look like he's against this backdrop of gigantic clouds. We're getting there. You're getting your exercise, buddy. I'm such a good friend. All right, and then here's another thing, folks. So I'm also, the sky is bright. Believe it or not, these clouds look, you know, not super bright maybe to you guys, but they're a lot brighter than the foreground. So what I'm doing is I'm panning the camera up. I'm getting my focal point on the clouds, and then I'm hitting auto exposure lock, okay? So now I'm properly exposed for that. Dave will be a little bit dark. That's fine. Actually, what I'll probably end up doing is I might drop the shadow detail a little bit in Photoshop and darken him up even more. I really want the main focus to be on these clouds. Dave is just going to be this little bit of little point of interest against those big clouds. So let me get this shot set up here. Okay, Dave. Turn around. Do jumping jacks. Thank you. He's probably like, you jerk. You made me walk all the way down here for like 2 shots. So, that's why shooting with friends is fun. Because you can use them as guinea pigs. Now, It's 25 after. I wanted to do this for about a half hour, and the reason I timed it out this way is for this right here. Hopefully this starts to show up. The sunset is what everybody thinks they want to shoot. And while it is fun, and while it is exciting, and especially if you're using a telephoto lens, the sun can look really cool, like a big ball of fire. But it's the time just after sunset when the sky really, really comes alive. This is the moment that you guys want to shoot. You want to be here for, I'd say, 15, 20 minutes after the sun goes down. Sun is behind the horizon at this point, but the color is just everywhere in the sky. So, with that said, we're 25 minutes into this. I was going to go for 30, but you know what? I'm going to stop this because I want to shoot so that I can share some photos with you guys. Don't forget, you can win a killer VO2 204 AB. I'm learning all the numbers. We've got so many products that are new. It's like, get all these numbers right, Jamie. So you want to win that tripod. I want you to win the tripod, but I want to see one of your sunset photos so that you can win that tripod. Thanks, you guys, for watching this. Totally cool to have so many people watching live, watching me get all geeked up about the color in the sky. But hey, it's what we do, right? We're photographers, and we live for this stuff. So you guys get out there and shoot those sunsets, and don't forget to share on the Vanguard page so we can hook you guys up with a tripod. Thanks to Vanguard for doing this giveaway. You guys rock. Best sponsors, man. Love you guys. And you guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the flip side. Oh, wait, hold on. I'm not done yet. Hold on. Follow me online. Look me up. MacDonald, like the farmer, not like the fast food. So MacDonald_photo. That's Twitter. That's Instagram. Find me on Facebook, man. I love having friends. It's fun. Bagged and tagged. I like that. All right. I'll talk to you guys later. Again, thanks a lot. Hey, the sunset could be from whenever. It doesn't have to be from today. So don't think you need to go shoot one immediately. All right. Thanks again, you guys, for tuning in. Thanks to Vanguard for doing this awesome giveaway. You guys rock. And